Hey, what is up, Max Nation? I am super pumped up, actually jacked out of my skull, acting like my ordinary normal self, broadcasting live once again from my closet. That's right. They've got me backed into the corner of the house, into the closet, broadcasting this weekly podcast. So happy this week. I'm super excited because we have Dr. Husain, who is a local pediatrician who's doing absolutely amazing things, not just in our community of Marlboro, New Jersey, which I happen to know, very well, that she's doing absolutely fantastic things for her patients. My daughter happens to be one of her patients, so I know. But also for our state, she's been a face of comfort to many New Jerseyans who watch her regularly on News 12. I know every time that my wife turns on News 12 and sees Dr. Husain reporting on the current state of affairs, she's like, this is the best decision we ever made. This is the truth. She says, this is the best decision we ever made to take on Dr. Husain as our pediatrician. And just even seeing her on TV has been an incredible source of comfort, I know, to my family. So folks, without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit about parenting during these crazy times that we're going through. Welcome, Dr. Husain.
Hi, how are you? And thank you. That was really nice. Thank you so much. That's so nice of you all.
So, I know in the Max, with the Max members all the time, people are coming over to me and saying, when are you starting a Max challenge for kids? And I tell them all the time, you're enrolled in Max Challenge for Kids. And they kind of look at me, side-eyed and say, well, your kids, they don't listen to you at all if they're anything like mine, but they watch you very closely, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And kids model parents' behavior. I'm not saying they're, when they're running like hooligans, they're acting like this, but no, when you're anxious or you're scared, you'd be surprised how often your kids pick up on that. When they know that you're happy while playing with them, they're happier when they're with you. Now, of course, that goes for the younger children, but teenagers too. They'll figure it out when you're upset or you're worried or anxious. All of a sudden, all their problems just become so much more exponentially bigger, and they're also more anxious.
So this is a real thing. I mean, I talk about it a lot, modeling behavior, right? So even if I feel nervous inside, I do try my absolute very best, for the business owners that are relying on me, for the members that are relying on me, but most importantly for my kids, because they're watching how I respond to the stress and all this. And that's making, I think, an imprint in their mind. I mean, this is just something that I've noticed, but this is science, right? This is actually what's happening right now.
Yeah, this is science. This is what's happening. And one thing that, people often ask me that just in general, the mental health burden, how do you go about, and it's such a broad question, but just let's talk about us as parents. Everybody right now is going through a stressful time. So everybody is being traumatized, whether you're a healthcare worker and a doctor and there are people dying on your shift, you're a nurse who doesn't know if you're going to have equipment, you're sitting at home and you don't know if you can pay your mortgage, or if you're a mother who's just like so tired of sitting in the kitchen and this is just like all you could think of is when can I send my children back to school? This is traumatizing everybody on some level. Even I feel like high school teenager who it's hard to be a teenager on a normal day. All of a sudden, now you don't know if you're going to graduate 12th grade and go to college. So this is stressful for everybody, I think. First of all, if we take a step back and think about that. And right now, everybody is at home and we're all on social media, as we are right now. And you might be seeing someone post up pictures of their family having breakfast during quarantine, and it's so much fun, or look at them and their kids are doing their Zoom classes. And you're thinking, man, Karen really has her life together. Why can't I do this? Don't do that. Comparison is really the thief of joy, and everybody is struggling at some point through this. So you just have to do the best you can. And what I'm telling my parents is this is not the time that you're thinking of winning the Parent of the Year award. This is the time that you're thinking of trying to just get you and your children through this. And one thing that I often tell parents is your goal is not to raise a happy-go-lucky child, okay? None of us are happy-go-lucky, optimistic people. Our goal is to raise resilient children. So children who can really stand up to their challenges and put their best face forward. If they can get through it while being optimistic, great. But and I know that when we went through teenage years and our young adulthood years, nobody was always optimistic. Our goal is to raise resilient children. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. And we can talk about that as we go on. And lastly, just think about how you can bring joy into your life. Since we said comparison is the thief of joy. So, there's a lot of things that are canceled right now, but there's so many things that aren't, right? Exercise is not canceled. You guys are still holding exercise classes virtually. Okay. Everybody has a pair of dumbbells lying around. You have a DVD player. You have a laptop. You have access to YouTube. Exercise is not canceled. Movies are canceled, but music isn't. Podcasts aren't. Audiobooks aren't. There's hobbies. Yeah, you can't maybe go bowling, but you can craft with your children. You can paint with your kids. You can get outside and play chalk. Like, I don't remember the last time I did that. I don't remember the last time I've seen so many children outside, to be honest.
That's true.
I have never seen so many children outside because they're so tired of staying inside on their screens that they're actually getting out. So laughter is not canceled. Humanity is not canceled. Focus on the things that aren't canceled and that you do have. And I think that's a great place to start when it comes to really trying to parent yourself first before you move on to your children.
I think that's absolutely fantastic advice, because I know personally the way that I naturally am, right, is to think about what is being canceled, right? I think the human mind just naturally goes to the negative. It naturally goes to what's missing. It naturally goes to what's been canceled in this particular case. But the good news is I think we could train ourselves to focus on what we do have and what's still around. I know I keep thinking back to my ancestors, my recent ancestors who were immigrants, right? And, man, they lived through the Depression, they lived through wars, they lived through all sorts of stuff, and they didn't have all the incredible things that we have access to now. Streaming movies, we could watch any movie, we could listen to any piece of music that we would want to listen to on literally.
Food delivered to our door. I know. Groceries delivered to our door. I know. So when we're grateful for that, or when we worry about this disease, I think one thing that we're always thankful for is health. Because I would hate to be a family in the hospital right now and worrying about my loved one. I think that just adds another dimension of stress and fear and anxiety to a situation. So whereas it's always hard, and I think that the human mind is, sometimes you want to vent and sometimes it's therapeutic, and I think that's fine to do that. I actually think it's okay to do that. If you want to complain to your wife, you want to complain to your mom, you want to complain to your siblings, go ahead. But don't always stay in that state of mind. Get it off your chest. Now you feel better. Okay. Deep breath.
Move on. Yep. So I know one of the pieces of advice I give to my older kids is my son, he's 18. Well, no, he's not 18. He's 20. What am I saying? He just turned 20. Man, I'm trying to rewind and go back, but can't stop time. So my son is 20, and I've said to him, if something's ever bothering you, if you need to talk and you don't think like you could talk to me, see a therapist. It's fine. He never took me up on it. But what I was really trying to say to him is, don't wait until you're 50 years old to deal with, if you're having a confidence issue, or if you're having a stress issue or an anxiety issue, deal with it now, because man, if you could get that stuff out of the way when you're 15, 16, 17, and, take advantage of everything that's, professional therapy in some cases. And man, that's only positioning you for more success in life. But I think a lot of people have, mixed feelings on therapy and things like that. What do you expect? Just, I'm bringing it up because I would imagine a lot of people are very stressed out right now.
Yeah. So it's funny you said that, because I honestly feel that everybody should have a therapist to some degree, because the human nature is essentially to kind of want to vent. And just like I mentioned, we want to vent to our spouse maybe, but sometimes that really does throw a wrench in our personal relationships, right? We don't always want to be the Debbie Downer, or be somebody who's always glum, but sometimes you really need to talk through your emotions, and you need somebody. Let's say sometimes you want to vent, and this is often a problem we see between, wives and husbands, that the wife might vent, the husband comes up with a very thoughtful solution, and she said, okay, well, that's great, but I just kind of want to keep venting. Sometimes we then hit a relationship block. Same with our children. Sometimes, when our children are young, my daughter's 2, if she falls down, she's still in the stage of, mama, kiss it, make my boo-boo better. Perfect. But when our kids get older, they don't want to hear that sometimes, that I'm going to make it all better. Sometimes they need to vent. And if you're not the person to handle that as the parent, maybe they need to talk to somebody else. I think therapy is a really great outlet. And I get that there's a stigma out there. And I think actually Luckily, it is starting to disappear a little bit. I think in the last maybe 2 years, I've seen that the tides are changing a little bit where we're talking more about mental health. And perhaps it's because we are successful as a nation and as individuals in so many other aspects that we still go home and we feel like a little drained and unhappy, and our emotional tank isn't full. And that's where we start scratching the mental health itch. And I think once we scratch it, you realize there's a lot more there than you really realized. I think it's wonderful, and I think that if you can find the right therapist for you, and that's important too. Some people have had bad experiences, and then they determine therapy is just not for them.
Mhm.
If you find the right outlet for you, no matter who that is, doesn't even have to be a licensed therapist. Even if you find somebody who's a life coach, somebody who's your gym coach, your trainer, if you find somebody who's your best friend or your teacher or your professor, somebody who's a mentor for you who you can talk to, I think that's a really great idea. Kudos to you if it's your parent, because then it's completely free and they're always there for you.
Yeah.
But if it's not, there's nothing wrong with talking to somebody else.
Yeah. And I would imagine that, during these time coming out of this COVID-19, once we start to get into that phase, that, a lot of people being cooped up in the house and, fear of the unknown and so much uncertainty in people's lives. And many people, majority of people, thankfully, in our country, they're not used to dealing with uncertainty and such.
No. And I think that's where we're running into the problems that people are, it's a control aspect. And, that's why I think we saw the initial hoarding behavior in the beginning of this. And to some degree, maybe even now too, where we couldn't find toilet paper, we couldn't find paper towels, we couldn't find
Right.
this. People can't, people want to focus on what they can control, and they can control what's in their homes. They can control what goes in and out. They can control how much toilet paper they buy, how much chicken they buy. So the hoarding behavior, while so annoying, it really, if you get down to it, it comes down to human nature. It's just a behavior mechanism. We just want to control. I think we're seeing that kind of let up now that people are seeing that this is going to last for more than 2 weeks. This is probably going to
Right.
last 6 weeks, 8 weeks onward. But it's normal. It's scary it's normal to feel a little scared and feel a little anxious. But I think that's why these important kind of open dialogues and lines of communication with your doctor are really important.
Yeah. I know that a lot of leaders look like they're not scared, right? I'm talking about in life in general, and people who are always successful in business. A lot of people that I've always looked up to are business people because
Yeah.
I'm in business, and I would look up to certain business people.
Yeah.
But when you get to know people better, the ones that are honest, everybody has self-doubt. Everybody has a certain degree of fear and such. So, we're all in this. And I think anybody who says that they're not scared to some level is basically lying, right? I mean, none of us know what the future holds completely.
Right. And you don't have to say, I'm scared about the virus, or I'm scared about this, or I'm health. You could still be scared about your business. I mean, my husband just launched his practice a year ago. He's scared, right? People who didn't get the PPP, they're scared. People who are worried that this is, I was just talking to somebody about co-parenting. So when you're coming from a divorced home, how do parents share custody right now of their children? Because you're trying not to move, you're trying to stay in one place. Well, that parent who doesn't get to see their child, oh my gosh, it's totally understandable to be scared that your child won't be as attached to you. I think it's very normal. And one thing that I say to parents is, before you really talk to children about COVID, talk to yourself first. So let's say you have vacation tickets planned for May, or let's say you had them planned for April, and you're in the car and you're driving and you're talking about canceling the tickets and how much money we're going to lose, and how you're on the phone with the airlines and no one's picking up, and what are you going to do? What if they're non-refundable? Our children pick up on that. They pick up on that. So take that. Those are all super normal stressors and worry points, but figure that out yourself. Take half a day, take the full day, take some time at nighttime and figure it out. Call the airlines what you're going to do if it's non-refundable, and then break it to your child about the vacation being canceled, or etc. And when you do, I think one thing, like, I've recently been talking about how to break bad news to your children, how to tell them when everything's canceled, how to do that. So one thing would be calm yourself. Second thing would be, when you go into this, think about and this is just a good rule of thumb for parenting in general, always try to think about what can my child learn from this situation. Not every situation is going to be ideal, and not every life lesson is going to be great. It might be something that just always sticks with you. Like, I'll admit that I once forged my parents' signature on a proper support, and I'm sure we've all done that. Um, and yes, I got in trouble for it, but my life lesson kind of about that was why it was wrong to forge signatures, just anybody's in general, and why it's important to have an open dialogue. And we're not going to get mad at you if you make X grade. So when you go into something and you break news to your child, always try to think about it in a way that what is my child going to learn from this as well? Because you'd be surprised how many life lessons will stick with you. It still sticks with me. It's been 20 years since that's happened, and
Yeah.
it's still stuck with me. And then we hit on this before, but letting your child vent. So sometimes we want to fix it and make the boo-boos all better. Let them vent. Let them do what they need to, and they might feel better. We've seen this a lot in children of military families. So when they feel sad about their dad or mom not being home, you don't always have to tell them it's going to be okay. Sometimes you just need to let them have that moment, and then they will feel better. They just need a soundboard. And then one thing, just don't fall into false reassurances. And I think that falls for anybody. As parents, when we want to make things better, we sometimes go overboard and we say, false reassurances or promising that we're going to go to Disney World in May. That's probably not a smart thing to do right now, because if you end up having to break that promise, that does put a kink in your relationship between you and your child. And then trust the process and try to check in as more rather than less. So one thing that I think a lot of, which is normal, is this kind of makes you uncomfortable to talk to your child about, hey, how are you feeling through this? Are you doing okay? And then when they say, yeah, okay. So then the conversation is done and you check, okay, I checked in with my child. But everybody's feeling a little overwhelmed. And one thing that I'm kind of a fan of is family meetings. So depending on how old your children are. So, right, if you have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, you're probably not going to get much out of a family meeting. But if you have adolescents, school-age children, I think that that's a really great resource, because in general, even before this whole pandemic happened, I'm a big fan of it because everybody can coordinate their schedules. They can coordinate household chores, who's doing pickups and drop-offs. But now it's a good way to really talk about and discuss your feelings. So children might turn to technology. Okay, well, you have to, as a parent, turn to other options. And we're going to fit in board games at this time. Okay, we're going to do family reading hour at this time. Great things to do would be talking about, okay, when are we going to do family walks together? I don't want to do walks. Okay, what's something you'd want to do? I want to play a video game. Okay, well, we can do 1 hour of video games with the families. And that's a really good way, I think, to get everybody kind of involved in some way. Even if you have a moody teenager, that's where you tap into them and are able to meet them where they'd like to do something. Otherwise, you don't want to fall into the aspect right now of not establishing any routine whatsoever. I have some patients and some children who, for instance, they will now stay up till 2 or 3 a.m. and then the kiddo sleeps until 1 p.m., sometimes 2 p.m. And then this just throws off everybody's schedule. You're losing family bonding time. You're losing your circadian rhythm. You're losing your sleep habits. You're losing hygiene practices. You're losing the chance to exercise and eat well during the day, because everybody's going to binge eat at night. So family meetings are very important to check in, set the rules, but also allow your family members, children, to contribute, cooperate. They can voice their concerns, their opinions, and what makes the most sense to you. I don't know. I'm a big fan of them. I think that they can be really helpful. And same thing, I think that's a really great way to add in passive recreation. So passive recreation is biking, hiking, walking, things that really allow you to get outside, but not contradict physical distancing or social distancing. So I think that's a really great way. Like we talked about chalk, playing hangman outside, doing different activities like that. So passive recreation is something really great, that it actually allows you to turn on a different part of your and really passively sort of let time pass by and still connect with our family members. So there've actually been a lot of studies on that it's a great way to get space when you need a break from the day, even from your children, if you wanted, to go on a walk by yourself and enjoy your own time.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I know for us and our family, we've been having dinner together for the entire duration of this, which is now, 7 days a week dinner for, and it's been absolutely amazing. And everybody's getting along so much better than they did before, the 1 or 2 times a week that we had dinner together. So there's so many positives, as crazy as it says. We did get a question from somebody. I'm going to read this to you and see if, one of the members asked, how much should we actually talk about the news and what is going on? Or should we let our kids or teenagers dictate how much we share about the news?
Oh, good question. I really like this. So I think there's different ways to handle this. So when it comes to our younger children, you don't really need to tell them that much anyway. There's not that much that they're going to be picking up on. So use your 2, 3-year-olds, for example. They might be seeing mom and dad home a lot more. Their daycare may be closed or something. You might be seeing some behavioral issues when they're acting up with authority figures, possibly. The other thing you might be seeing is maybe they're being a little alarmed by seeing their parents in masks. So that's a handful of things that you could see for your younger children. But for your older children, the ones who are school age and teenagers who do realize there's something going on here, like I mentioned, tap into them early rather than later and waiting for them to find out. But I would actually not have the news on in front of them. I would take the time that you watch the news, especially if you have a school age child, you filter out what's important and what's not important. Them having to see like 100 something deaths in New Jersey, that's not important for them to see right now. That's not important for them to know that, okay, school is going to possibly be extended till school outages will be extended till May 15th. Okay, you can watch that, take in the information, and then tell them that. But they don't need to see ventilator shortages or PPE shortages. They don't need to see, that food bank lines are getting longer. That's something that's depressing enough for us to know as adults. And that's why I even advocate for you as adults. Sometimes we hit the reset button, we take a night off. I know I do that. Like Friday nights, I usually try to take off. I don't look at the news. I don't try to, even for the weekends, I try to just turn my brain off from it. Take that time, reset yourself. But when it comes to your kids, you should be the first line of the news. And then you can tell them however so you choose to. Now, our teenagers, that's a little bit more difficult. And I understand that. But what I think that you should do then is frequent check-ins, because again, they're getting their news from their friends, who are they're texting. So then talk to them like, okay, how is it going on? Maybe they'll open up to you about something they've heard, and you can tell them if it's important or not important, if it's true or not true. I think simple reassurances can actually go a long way. So telling them that, we don't actually really know that yet. It's important not to really jump the gun. Do give them some degree of control. So if they do want to watch the news with you, they actually enjoy watching the news with you, like your teenager, let them. But if they're an anxious kid and you see that it's making them more anxious, and this is a good segue to talk about what the common symptoms of anxiety are. So besides just the, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling worried, they can have headaches, they can have stomach aches. I have children who can vomit, who are vomiting at night without any symptoms. And once we rule out any red flags, this is definitely anxiety, because when you sit alone in bed at night, all your thoughts go to anxiety. So that's why you should be trying to the first line of defense. I know, my 9-year-old niece actually told my sister, Mommy, did you ever not have to go to school and miss seeing your friends because of a virus? Verbatim. And my sister was like, I didn't know what to say to that. It's really hard. They catch you off guard. So if you notice that your children are showing those signs of anxiety, talk to your pediatrician. And this is really important, but we put out some good data that this is not the time to cut your child's Zoom sessions short with their therapist. Oh, they're not going to school. They don't need therapy. Nope, don't do that. There's so many unknowns right now. This is not the time to cut down their ADHD medication, or because they're not in school. Just don't mess around with things right now. Keep things as stable as you can in your child's life, because they are missing a crucial component of going to school and seeing their friends. That being said, monitor your media use. Teenagers or non-teenagers. One really great app I like is called Bark, B-A-R-K. Parents can sign up and they do not have to be strict about it, but they'll have an idea of what their child's watching and texting about. That way, if you find out anything, that's concerning, you can approach it earlier. And you can also control what apps your children have access to. So I really like that program actually. And then in general, just be a good role model. So you can't expect your child to not be anxious if you're giving off anxious vibes. So one thing we always say is when somebody's coding and you have to do CPR on them, before you go in the room and check the patient, check your own pulse. Okay. So take a minute, take a deep breath yourself before you approach the patient. And that's the same thing that you kind of have to think about as a parent. Before you go in to go counsel your child, make sure you have a good grip on your emotions.
Wow. That's actually incredible advice for sure. I mean, I'm literally going to forget that the bark thing was great, right? I think that's so important, but then, checking your emotions before you go into a situation is so important. Our kids
It's
are
so
learning more from watching us probably than anything we'll ever say.
Yeah, no, it's so important because especially teenagers, they know how to push your buttons. They know how to push your buttons. So if you just take a step backward and think like, okay, with any conflict, how you're going to approach it, even if it's something about COVID and you have to talk to them about canceling their graduation party or something, make sure you have an idea of how to approach it before you do it. And again, my approach to parenting and in general, just medicine is being more proactive than retroactive. If you wait for a problem to show, then you're gonna have a bigger mess to clean up. But if you're proactive and really checking in frequently or doing, the right things along the way, then you'll probably have an easier time dealing with the issue at hand.
Great advice. So we're coming up on the end of this, but I would like to give you an opportunity to just, any closing remarks or anything you'd like to share with everybody and how they could find you too. That would be important.
Sure. So one thing that I feel like just to mention to families, parents who are trying to work from home right now, things that I would say have helped is to try to let go of that usual 8-hour day. Think of parenting as a team sport here. So if you're parenting with your significant other, this is not the time where you keep tally of each other. Try to pick up where the other person can leave off. And if you're going to have, distractions in way, please don't take it hard on yourself. Okay. So everybody's going to, probably have some distractions in the way of either their children or media. It's not going to be the same kind of productivity. So be forgiving with yourself at this time too. I think that's really important. And lastly, especially since we've hit a lot on mental health, know where to find your state's mental health crisis text line numbers and mental health hotline numbers. Write them down, put them somewhere. You don't even have to approach them right now, but just have it somewhere so that if things do get bad, I like that proactive approach rather than retroactive, so that it's there waiting for you if you need it. And there's no shame. Where parents can reach me, my Facebook at Pure Direct Pediatrics. I do share some news outlets and posts there. They can also find me on Instagram at Amna Husain, AMNA HUSAIN. I am doing a series on kids' behavior there, where I've seen a lot of kids' behavior really pick up in negative ways. So kind of parent coaching and ways to really discipline our children throughout this, as you can hear mine screaming. Do you hear mine screaming?
I did. But I just want to end by just saying, like, everything that you're doing for the community is absolutely amazing. All the resources that you just spoke of and the reassurance you give everybody on your News 12 appearances it's fantastic. And I know from our point of view, we're thankful to have you as our family's pediatrician. So thank you very much.
Oh, of course. No problem. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Bye.